Jit's addiction worsened. Manson was forced into making the hard decision of sacking his long-standing collaborator.
I left the band, I guess it was 93, Christmas of 93, and after a series of heroin overdoses, run-ins with the law, warnings from the band, the management, the record labels, everything pretty much broke down at that point where I was forced into rehab. So I went in there. It was a few days before Christmas, and Manson came to visit me crying, "Oh, just get better. You know, you're doing the right thing. We're going on tour in 6 months. You get it together, you know, everything will be cool." So I thought, okay, good, you know, I'll stay in this rehab for a month or whatever, do what I got to do. And then I get a letter like Christmas Eve, like FedEx, thinking it's like a Christmas card or something. And no, it was like a form letter from the management. Your services are no longer needed, you know, this and that. So I got fired like on Christmas Eve in rehab. And so that was that. So I'm in rehab, and I'm thinking, like, they have a show on New Year's Eve, and I'm going to be in rehab on New Year's Eve, and I'm thinking, like, well, what's going on? And so they got that Twiggy guy in the band, and I'm like, well, man, he better not be using my equipment and all this. So I'm in rehab calling managers, screaming, and then I'm in rehab with all these criminals, you know, drug addicts that are nuts, and I'm telling them what happened. And I got these big, like, black dudes asking me where Manson lives. And I'm, like, right down the street from his house. The rehab was in the same neighborhood. And they're like, oh, tell me, you know, I got an alibi. I'm in rehab. I'll go over there and I'll make it look like an accident. I'll do this and that. And it was, like, almost going to happen. It was, like, a serious thing that, like, damage was going to be done to, like, him and his family.
In September of '93, we had a showcase for Nothing Records. We'd been talking to Trent Reznor for a while, and this was the show that would officially seal the deal as to whether Nothing would sign us. And it was pretty much in the bag, but still. And the only problematic factor was Brad Gidget Keen. He was not fitting in. He was not working out. He had a lot of problems that we had to address along with him. And this particular showcase was his last show. He wound up recording the bass parts for Portrait, but that was his last show.
I don't think they wanted to have him leave the band, but I mean, they really had no choice. He had a problem, and he needed to take care of it. And, you know, I think they gave him a lot of leeway, and they just had to make a change. I mean, it was a terrible show. He was not contributing to the band, you know, as he had been and as he could.
When I got out of rehab, the way I was thinking was I was going to have like a meeting with everybody and try to tell them, like, okay, I understand, you know, what happened. I'm sorry. Could I just, like, talk to you all? With the managers there, of course. And I wanted to have it, like, at our warehouse. And I was going to, like, get them all into the warehouse and close the door and pour gasoline everywhere and set everybody on fire. So I had all these crazy, like, revenge fantasies. And it took me years to get over it until I realized that it wasn't their fault. It was my fault. You know, it was like, if I was in their position, I would have done the same thing.
Geordie was a natural replacement. I mean, Geordie was, like, hanging out with Brian all the time. They were good friends. And Geordie's a great guitar player. Believe it or not, even though he's known, I guess, for being a bass player in Manson, but I always knew him as a guitar player. Crazy personality. Like, Brian, I would think, would be kind of the mastermind of a prank, and Geordie would go and carry it out, is the way I would kind of characterize it. Remember one time in Tampa, we went for a music convention over there, a local music convention, and they were doing a showcase, and we were all staying in the same hotel. And Geordie would just, we were hanging out in different rooms, and Geordie would just be running up and down the hall creating mayhem, and he'd just show up at the front door with his penis in his hand, just spinning it around, and then run off. He He liked to show his penis a lot.
With Twiggy Ramirez on bass, the band embarked on their first tour, supporting Nine Inch Nails and promoting Portrait of an American Family. The album came out on the 19th of July 1994 and became an underground success.
Portrait of an American Family, Manson's debut, is without question the most playful of all of the albums. I mean, playful, not in a kind of, I don't know, children's television kind of a sense. You know, it's got elements from children's television in there, but they're layered in with some pretty poisonous hooks. But still, it's deliberately throwaway. There's something about it which is fun, you know, which doesn't demand too much of the audience, that doesn't sort of, you know, have all these sort of pretensions to philosophy or whatever the hell else that start cropping up later. You can see elements of that, but the progression is very, very clear.
I think it's a great first record, and I think it's a great first release because it wasn't over-promoted. It wasn't like the label saying, driving the product. You know, they let people buy it. They didn't tell people to buy it, they let people buy it. And that's really how it's got to be done.
Interestingly, when Manson progresses onto other albums, it's Portrait of an American Family that often gets left out of the chronology, which he doesn't talk about so much anymore, which isn't the persona fully formed. It's a sort of, you know, it's a pupil form of Manson, if you like.
As the Portrait tour continued, Manson first came up against the conservative right of America. In Jacksonville, following an alleged nudity-filled gig, Marilyn was arrested for violation of the Adult Entertainment Code. He spent a short time in prison before making bail.
The incident in Jacksonville, which is how we will refer to it, I think there was a bit of a setup. I mean, I don't think there would have been cops at the show right on time to see, you know, Marilyn Manson with, you know, a sexual prosthetic or whatever you want to call it, something that's barely a legal offense, you know, just barely. But I mean, if the police saw an opportunity and they were there just at the right time to see it, it's kind of a setup. But again, you know, anything like that is gonna help us. You know, don't arrest the singer. You know, they'll print his picture and they'll do a story about it. Oh, you know.
Part of what Manson's all about is poking fun at people who don't have a sense of humor or a sense of don't have sense, and those people they don't get the joke because the joke's at their expense. So they're not going to get the joke. I think they took offense because it was being sacrilegious, you know, and just the whole traditional rock and roll is evil and it's corrupting our youth